Yes. Welcome to the Deep Dive Library, the podcast where we don't just read entrepreneurial books, we dissect them. If you're serious about building empires, not just dreaming them, well, you're in the right place. Every week, we unlock secrets top founders don't want you to know. Hit subscribe now, because missing one episode might just be the mistake that keeps you average. Okay, let's unpack this. Today's deep dive is really laser focused on a principle that, once you truly grasp it, it can fundamentally change how you approach building something significant. We're talking about the 80-20 principle. You might also know it as the Pareto principle.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable, isn't it? How this simple sounding ratio, 80% of outcomes coming from just 20% of effort just keeps popping up everywhere across so many different domains, and understanding it, applying it. It's not just about being more productive in a sort of brute force way. It's more strategic than that. It's about leveraging your energy for maximum impact, focusing on those things that really drive growth.
Exactly. That's the core of it. And our roadmap for this whole exploration is Richard Koch's audiobook, The 80-20 Principle, Achieve More with Less.
We've been digging into it using a transcript from the Motive Mystic YouTube channel. So our mission today really is to go beyond just, understanding the theory. We want to equip you with practical strategies.
Yeah.
How can you find those critical 20% levers in your own efforts to build something substantial? How do you cut through all the noise, the less important stuff, and ultimately get more significant results with, greater focus and less wasted energy?
Right. Makes sense. So let's lay the groundwork first. Where did this whole 80-20 idea even come from? What's the origin story?
Okay, so it all started with this Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto. This was back in the early 20th century. He was looking at Italy and noticed something pretty striking. About 80% of the land was actually owned by just 20% of the population.
Okay. A big imbalance.
Yeah, a huge imbalance. It really stood out. And what's fascinating, I think, is that Pareto didn't just write it off as some weird one-off thing about Italian land. He started seeing similar patterns elsewhere, right? Like a small percentage of the inputs often seemed to lead to a really large percentage of the outputs. It wasn't just about wealth or land. It seemed like a more fundamental principle working underneath.
And that's basically the core of the 80-20 principle. It suggests that in a whole range of situations, roughly 80% of the results you get come from only about 20% of the effort you put in, which, when you think about it, is a massive disparity.
It really is. To make it more concrete for you listening, think about building an empire through sales. You often see this, right? Maybe 20% of the salespeople are the ones closing 80% of the deals. If you recognize that pattern, leadership can then focus, okay, what are these top people doing differently? Can we replicate those strategies?
Absolutely. And that's why this principle is just so critical for anyone serious about building something significant, building that empire. It's about learning to spot and then really amplify the efforts that give you the biggest bang for your buck. Imagine focusing your limited resources, your time, your energy, your money on that crucial 20% that's going to drive the vast majority of your success. That sounds like a powerful edge, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And it goes beyond just, individual productivity or sales numbers. Think about a software company, maybe. It could be that 20% of their features are getting 80% of the user engagement. If they identify that, they know where to prioritize their development efforts. Focus on what users really value.
So you can see this isn't just some abstract theory. It has real practical implications for anyone striving for big achievements. Over this deep dive, we're going to unpack how you can actually apply this principle to your own ventures. We'll look at strategies for finding those critical 20% areas, figuring out how to minimize the drag from the less productive 80%, and ultimately help you build more effectively with, greater impact.
Okay, so we've got the basic idea, the 80-20 principle. Now, the really important question, how do we actually use this in our own lives, our businesses? The first key step, as the audiobook really emphasizes, is pinpointing that vital 20%, the tasks, the relationships, the activities that are giving you the biggest rewards.
Right. Spotting what the book calls your vital few and understanding why that's so important is, it's key. When you consciously channel your focus, your resources towards these high impact areas, the things that truly drive progress towards your big goals, your empire, you're just setting yourself up for more efficient and ultimately much more significant success.
Okay, so let's break that down. How do we identify these vital few? Maybe start with tasks. What kind of questions should we ask ourselves to figure out which tasks are in that critical 20%?
The audiobook suggests a couple of really fundamental questions to start with. First, what are your most important long-term goals? For building your empire, what's that ultimate vision? And second, Which specific tasks contribute most directly, most significantly to hitting those big goals? You need to think strategically. Which activities, if you do them consistently and well, will have the biggest positive ripple effect? For a founder, maybe that's securing key partnerships or really nailing the core product innovation, not getting stuck in minor admin stuff.
And it's the same logic for relationships, right? Which are often so foundational when you're building something lasting. You need to ask, which relationships give you the most significant support or guidance or opportunities related to your goals? Who are the mentors, the key collaborators, the strategic allies who genuinely help you move forward? Those are the relationships where investing your time and energy will likely pay off the most down the road.
Absolutely. And don't forget about your activities more broadly, the categories of things you spend time on. This could be learning and development, strategic thinking time, even stuff that helps you recharge so you can perform at your best. Ask yourself, which of these activities have the biggest positive impact on your ability to execute and move towards those larger goals?
So it's a process of critical evaluation. But how do we go from asking these questions to actually getting tangible insights and taking action?
Yeah, good question. The audiobook gives some very practical steps here. A really powerful starting point is to track your time meticulously. For maybe a week, keep a detailed log. How are you spending your hours? What specific tasks are you doing? Who are you interacting with? And you've got to be really honest with yourself about where the time is actually going.
That seems crucial, because often how we think we spend our time is pretty different from the reality, isn't it? So, okay, you've got this detailed record. What's next?
Ruthless analysis. Look for the patterns in that log. Identify the tasks, the relationships, the activities that consistently lead to good outcomes, significant progress, or even just feeling accomplished. Those are your prime candidates for the vital few. And conversely, make a note of the things that seem to eat up a lot of time but don't generate much in return, or just leave you feeling drained.
Right. Identify the high impact and the low impact stuff.
Exactly. And once you've identified those high impact areas, the next step is intentional prioritization. Make a conscious effort. Allocate more of your time, more of your energy to those vital few tasks. Nurture those key relationships. Engage more in those high value activities. Actually schedule them in. Make them non-negotiable. Treat them like the important things they are.
The audiobook gives this really compelling example. Jane, a project manager. She's quick to scale her team's output. She tracked her time and realized, she spent a ton of time in status update meetings, but the time she invested in directly coaching her team members and strategically planning the upcoming projects, that yielded way better results. Team performance, project success, everything. So she deliberately shifted her priorities, more coaching, more planning, and she streamlined those less impactful meetings.
And that's really the core message of this chapter for you as you're building your empire. Identifying your vital few is step one. It's foundational. By focusing your precious resources, time, energy, attention on the tasks, relationships, and activities that deliver the biggest punch, you can seriously accelerate your progress and get more done with less wasted effort.
Okay, makes sense. So we've done the hard work, identified our vital few, that crucial 20%. What's the logical next step then to really apply this 80-20 principle effectively?
Well, the audiobook is pretty clear on this. The next absolutely crucial move is to confront and then minimize the trivial many.
Yeah.
That's the other 80%, the tasks, activities, commitments that might fill up your schedule, but honestly, don't contribute much to your big goals or even your happiness. It's about strategically cutting back, maybe even eliminating these energy drains.
Yeah, and this feels particularly relevant today, doesn't it? We're just bombarded with distractions. Yeah. Think about the constant emails, the endless social media scroll, those meetings that, feel more like going through the motions than actually getting something done. These are perfect examples of the trivial many that can so easily pull you off track and suck up valuable time you could be spending on real empire building work.
Totally. And the audiobook shares this very relatable story about Jack, a startup founder. He was always busy, answering every single email right away, going to every networking event, even micromanaging small stuff. He felt like he was working incredibly hard, but the key metrics for his business, they weren't really moving. He was just stuck in this cycle of busyness, not real productivity.
Right. And what's insightful there is that Jack eventually realized the real progress, landing key clients, actually developing his core product that came from a much, much smaller fraction of what he's doing. So he made a deliberate shift. He identified those time-consuming but low-impact tasks and actively cut back. The audiobook suggests that by strategically eliminating that trivial many, he freed up a significant amount of time and, just as importantly, mental energy to focus on the vital few things that truly pushed his business forward.
So how do we actually do that? Identify and then minimize these trivial many. The audiobook gives us a practical framework. First, you just have to become really aware of them. Ask yourself some tough questions, like what tasks on my list keep getting pushed back because they never feel truly urgent or important? Which activities consistently leave me feeling drained or unproductive? Are there commitments I've said yes to that don't really align with my core goals? Could I politely decline or delegate them? The book mentions Sarah, who realized she spent hours on admin tasks a virtual assistant could handle, freeing her up for strategic business development, that kind of thing.
So spot the time and energy leaks. Then what?
Then you consciously prioritize your vital few. Keep comparing. What's the potential impact of doing this trivial many task versus investing that same time in a high-impact activity? That comparison often makes it painfully clear where your focus really ought to be.
Okay. And what about those trivial many tasks that you just can't avoid? Maybe they're necessary for keeping things running, but they aren't core to growth.
Great point. For those, you really need to think hard about delegation or automation. Can you hand this off to someone else, freeing up your time for higher level thinking and action? Or can you use technology or systems to automate those repetitive processes? The book mentions Mark, a founder who automated his social media posting. That saved him several hours a week he could then put into product innovation.
That makes a lot of sense. And another really crucial piece here is setting clear boundaries, right? Protecting your time. Learning to actually say no, politely, of course, to requests and commitments that just don't line up with your strategic priorities. The audiobook gives an example of a leader constantly pulled into meetings that weren't essential for them. By setting clear guidelines and empowering their team, they cut down their meeting load significantly, gained valuable time back for strategic work.
Yeah, saying no is a superpower. The audiobook also touches on practical tips for decluttering physically and digitally. A cleaner workspace can genuinely lead to a clearer mind, better focus. And similarly, cutting down on digital noise, unsubscribing from useless emails, turning off notifications that frees up significant mental bandwidth.
And what seems really vital, as the audiobook stresses, is that tackling the trivial many isn't something you do just once. It needs ongoing attention, ongoing vigilance. You have to regularly review your tasks, your commitments, how you're spending your time. Be ready to continuously prune away activities that aren't serving your main objectives. The book even suggests, like a weekly or monthly review, to proactively catch any trivial many creeping back in.
Exactly. So the big takeaway here is, by strategically minimizing or just flat out eliminating the trivial many, you create space. More time, more energy, more focus. Space for the activities that truly drive progress towards building your empire. It's all about being intentional with your resources and prioritizing what's essential.
Okay, so we're getting better at spotting and ditching the less impactful stuff. Now let's zoom in on maximizing the effectiveness of the time we do spend on those vital few tasks. How do we make that time really count?
Right. This brings us squarely into the audiobook's insights on time management. Specifically, this whole idea of working smarter, not just harder. It's about realizing that true productivity isn't measured by how busy you look or how many hours you log. It's about strategically focusing on those high-impact activities within the limited time you actually have.
Precisely. The audiobook really drives home that the 80-20 principle applies directly to how we allocate our time. If 80% of our desired results come from only 20% of our efforts, then it's absolute paramount that we dedicate the lion's share of our focused time to those crucial high-leverage tasks.
So what are some practical strategies the audiobook suggests for actually prioritizing our time effectively? A foundational step is the good old to-do list. But the key difference here is not just listing everything under the sun. You need to critically evaluate each item. Clearly mark the tasks that directly align with your core empire-building goals and have the potential for the biggest impact.
And another really effective tool they highlight is the Eisenhower box. Categorizing tasks based on urgency and importance. This gives you a visual way to separate things. What needs doing right now and is important. Urgent and important. What's important for the long game but not pressing today? Important, not urgent schedule. And it also helps identify tasks that might feel urgent but aren't really important for you to do. Urgent, not important, delegate if you can. And the stuff that's neither not urgent, not important, eliminate.
That visual breakdown can be a total game changer, helping you see where your precious time is truly best invested. And the audiobook really underscores the importance of making time for those important but not urgent tasks. Those are often the strategic activities, right? The ones that lay the foundation for long-term success, like developing a new market strategy or investing in your team's skills.
Yeah, the stuff that's easy to put off but crucial. And of course, we need to be proactive about shutting down time wasters. The audiobook advocates for setting specific time blocks for things like checking email or social media rather than letting them interrupt you constantly. Turning off notifications during deep work periods, another critical strategy for focus. And, like we said, learning to say no to low-priority requests is just essential for guarding your valuable time.
The audiobook also brings up batching similar tasks. For instance, instead of answering emails as they come in all day, you might dedicate, say, a 30-minute block in the morning and another in the afternoon just for emails. This cuts down on the mental cost of constantly switching gears between different kinds of work.
Good point. And furthermore, the audiobook points to various tools that can help boost efficiency. Task management software like Asana, Trello, they help you organize, prioritize, track progress on key projects. Calendar apps like Google Calendar let you schedule dedicated time for your most important tasks. Treat those blocks like real appointments. And things like the Pomodoro technique, those focused work sprints with short breaks, can be a really powerful way to stay concentrated and avoid mental fatigue.
And finally, it might sound a bit counterintuitive when we're talking about productivity, but the audiobook really stresses the importance of taking regular breaks. Stepping away from the work for short periods actually boosts your overall output by preventing burnout and letting your brain reset and refresh.
So the core message from this chapter is pretty clear. Effective time management, guided by the 80-20 principle, isn't about cramming more stuff into your day. It's about strategically focusing your limited time on those high-impact tasks, the ones that will drive the most significant progress toward your goal of building something truly impactful.
Okay, so we're managing time better, focusing on the right tasks. But how do we make sure the right tasks are genuinely aligned with our big picture vision, with the empire we're trying to build?
That's where the absolute crucial step of setting your priorities right comes in. The audiobook emphasizes this, is like strategically picking out the most vital pieces of a giant puzzle. The pieces that will actually form the picture of your success.
Yeah, it uses that great analogy. The jar, the big rocks, the pebbles, and the sand. Remember that one? The big rocks are your top priorities, the absolute fundamentals for building your empire. If you fill your jar with sand, all the trivial stuff first, there's no room left for the big rocks. You have to put the big impactful things in first, then let the smaller stuff fill the gaps around them.
Okay, so how do we identify our big rocks in the context of building an empire? The audiobook lays out a pretty clear process. First step, define your most important long-term goals for your venture. What's the ultimate vision? What kind of impact do you want to make? Get specific. Be ambitious.
Got it. So, clarity on the end game first. Then what?
Then you need to rank those goals. Which ones are strategically most important? Which ones, if you achieve them, will have the biggest positive ripple effect on your empire's growth and success? Which ones really align with your core values, your long-term aspirations?
Okay, rank the goals, then break them down.
Exactly. Break each big goal down into smaller, actionable tasks. This makes those huge, maybe intimidating goals feel more doable. Gives you concrete steps. So if your goal is, say, expanding into a new market, the tasks might be conduct market research, identify potential partners, develop a localized marketing plan, things like that.
Right, makes sense. And then the audiobook brings back the Eisenhower matrix again.
Yes, because now you assess the urgency and importance of each of those smaller tasks. Not all tasks under a big goal are created equal. Right? Understanding which tasks are both urgent and important, deal with those now, and crucially, which are important but not yet urgent, schedule dedicated time for these, helps you keep focus on what really matters for long-term growth.
Gotcha. So you've got prioritized goals, broken down tasks, assessed by urgency and importance. Then you build a plan.
Precisely. Create a strategic action plan. Schedule those tasks, block out time in your calendar specifically for working on your big rocks, those high priority activities moving you towards your vision. Focus especially on Quadrant 1, urgent important, and Quadrant 2, important not urgent tasks.
The audiobook also reminds us to apply the 80-20 rule even within those tasks. Like for a specific goal, which 20% of the task needed will probably give you 80% of the progress. Focus your energy there. So if your goal is boosting sales and you know direct outreach to a certain client type has worked best before, prioritize that specific action.
And regular reviews are critical for staying on track with these priorities. Daily and weekly. Start of the day, review your top priorities. End of the week, assess your progress towards the bigger goals. Adjust your plan if needed. This keeps you moving in the right direction consistently.
And we keep saying it, but learning to say no to distractions and low priority stuff is just essential. You have to protect your focus and make sure you have the time and energy for your real priorities.
Yeah, because staying focused on core priorities when daily demands and fires pop up, that's tough. The audiobook offers tips here too, like creating a distraction-free work zone, taking those regular breaks to avoid fatigue, and constantly reminding yourself of the why, connecting daily actions back to the bigger vision for your empire.
The book shares that example of Anna, the entrepreneur launching a new product line. She clearly ranked her goals: product development, initial sales, brand awareness, and then made a detailed action plan, prioritizing based on urgency and strategic importance. By focusing on key product features for early adopters and targeted marketing, she hit her launch goals effectively. It works.
So yeah, setting priorities right is about having that clear strategic roadmap, making conscious choices about where your energy goes, and constantly aligning your daily grind with your long-term vision for building something significant. Make sure those big rocks get in the jar first.
Okay, we've covered identifying the vital few, cutting the trivial many, managing time, setting priorities. Now let's really dig into the core of getting more done with less wasted effort, actually enhancing our productivity.
Exactly. This chapter in the audiobook is all about that. Boosting your output, not by just grinding harder or longer, but by strategically applying that 80-20 principle to how you work on your empire building stuff.
Right. It's about pinpointing those high-impact activities, the 20% that truly drive progress and growth, and then channeling the bulk of your energy and focus right there. The audiobook uses an example of a marketing team, right? Focusing their efforts on the 20% of channels that consistently bring in 80% of their leads, instead of spreading themselves thin across a dozen less effective ones.
Yeah, and the Eisenhower matrix. Still a valuable tool here. Helps you make smart calls on what needs your attention now versus what can be scheduled, delegated, or just dropped to maximize your truly productive time.
And that strategy we mentioned earlier, batching similar tasks together, that's huge for efficient productivity. It cuts down on the mental drag of constantly switching between different kinds of work. Lets you get into a better flow, like a founder blocking out time just for investor emails, then another block for strategic planning, another for team check-ins. Much smoother.
Leveraging automation, too, is key for freeing yourself up for the high-level work. Spotting those repetitive tasks that software or tools can handle that can be a massive efficiency boost. Think automated email replies, social media scheduling, basic financial reports.
The Pomodoro technique also gets another mention here. Those structured work intervals, the short breaks, it's highlighted again as a really practical way to maintain focus and maximize output during your dedicated work time. Helps you work intentionally, avoid that burnout feeling.
And strategically using technology is crucial. Project management tools to stay organized, productivity apps for task lists, communication platforms to streamline teamwork, they all contribute to a smoother, more efficient workflow.
And we really can't overstate the importance of knowing when to say no. It comes up again because it's so vital for productivity. Taking on too many low-priority tasks just dilutes your focus. It stops you from putting your best energy into the activities that will actually move the needle on building your empire.
Finally, the audiobook really stresses that you need to regularly evaluate and tweak your productivity methods. What worked when you were starting out might need to change as your business grows. You need that consistent reflection, a willingness to try different techniques, like a weekly productivity review to spot areas for improvement.
So the core message here, by strategically focusing on high-impact work, prioritizing smartly, batching tasks, using automation and tech wisely, and protecting your time, you can seriously boost your productivity. Get more significant results with less wasted effort as you build that empire.
Okay, productivity is improving, focus is sharpening, but how do we make sure these efficient ways of working actually stick? How do they become ingrained habits that support our long-term empire-building goals?
Ah, yes. That leads perfectly into the next section of the audiobook, Building Effective Habits. It really emphasizes that good, solid habits are fundamental if you want to consistently apply the 80-20 principle over the long haul. Habits guide your actions almost automatically towards success.
Absolutely. The audiobook points out something pretty striking. About 45% of our daily actions are driven by habit. That's almost half. So by consciously cultivating productive habits that align with the 80-20 principle, You're essentially automating a lot of the behaviors that lead to success.
Right.
That frees up mental energy for the bigger picture stuff, strategic thinking, innovation in your empire building.
The key, according to the audiobook, is to start small. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. That rarely works. Pick one key habit you want to build that aligns with your core goals. Maybe it's dedicating the first hour of your day to your most important task. Then break that down into tiny, manageable steps, really tiny.
And that 2190 rule is mentioned too. It's a sort of guideline, right? It takes about 21 days to form the habit, maybe 90 days for it to become more automatic, part of your routine. So focus on consistency in those early weeks.
Understanding your triggers is also super important. Habits usually kick off because of specific cues or situations. If you identify the triggers for your current habits, the good ones and the bad ones, you can either avoid the negative triggers or consciously use the positive ones to start the new habits you want.
Positive reinforcement helps lock habits in too. When you successfully do the thing you wanted to do, reward yourself somehow. It doesn't have to be big. Just reinforces that positive link, makes you more likely to do it again.
The audiobook also suggests replacing unwanted habits with better ones rather than just trying to willpower them away. So if you habitually check social media first thing, try replacing it with a new habit, like reviewing your top priorities for the day instead. Swap it out.
Finding accountability partners can be a big help too. Sharing your goals with someone else who's also working on habits creates that sense of shared mission, keeps you motivated. And tracking your progress using a habit tracker, a journal, seeing that visual proof of your effort can really keep you going.
And you got to remember, building lasting habits takes time. It takes consistency. Setbacks will happen. That's normal. Don't beat yourself up over a missed day. Just acknowledge it and get back on track with the next opportunity. Persistence is absolutely key.
And finally, take time to reflect. Look back at the habits you're building. Celebrate the wins, however small they seem. Adjust your approach if something isn't working. Every positive habit you lock in is like another solid brick in the foundation of your empire. The audiobook even suggests a little exercise for you listening. Pick one positive habit that would really help your empire building goals, and one less helpful habit you want to replace. Break the new one into small steps. Figure out the triggers. Plan your rewards.
Yeah. So by focusing on consciously building effective habits aligned with 80-20, you're basically putting your success on autopilot, making it easier to consistently do the high-impact stuff that drives your empire forward.
Okay, habits are forming, efforts are focused. Now, how do we really dial in that concentration? How do we cut through the noise and truly focus on the task at hand?
That's the absolute core of the audiobook's next chapter, the sheer power of focus. It defines focus simply as concentrating on one thing while consciously blocking out distractions. And in today's world, with notifications pinging constantly, demands flying everywhere, this skill is just paramount. It's essential for effectively using the 80-20 principle and getting significant results as you build your empire.
Precisely. The audiobook really hammers this home. When you can laser focus your attention on your most important tasks, your efficiency and effectiveness just skyrocket. Think about a concentrated effort versus scattered attention. The impact is massively different.
The audiobook offers several really powerful techniques to help improve focus. A basic foundational step. Set clear, measurable goals before you even start a task. Knowing exactly what you're trying to achieve makes it so much easier to direct your attention and push back against distractions. So instead of vaguely saying, work on the marketing plan, a clearer goal is draft the competitive analysis section of the marketing plan for the next hour. Much sharper.
And that prioritized to-do list acts like a roadmap for your focus, right?
Sure.
Breaking down big goals into smaller steps, arranging them by importance, it gives your attention a clear path to follow, guides you step by step.
Actively eliminating distractions. Non-negotiable for deep focus. You have to identify your main culprits, notifications, email alerts, maybe a noisy environment, and take real steps to minimize or kill them during your focused work time. Turn off notifications, use website blockers, find a quiet spot, whatever it takes.
The Pomodoro technique gets highlighted again here too, as a super effective method for maintaining those focused work sessions. Working in concentrated bursts, like 25 minutes, then taking a short break, it helps sustain attention, prevents mental fatigue, leads to better overall productivity.
Interestingly, the audiobook also mentions the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. Even just short, regular mindfulness practices can actually train your brain, make it more present, less likely to wander off or get snagged by distractions, strengthens that focus muscle.
And there are tools and apps out there designed to help with focus too. Things that play ambient noise for concentration, task management platforms to keep you organized and on point.
Your physical space matters a lot too. Creating a dedicated workspace that's organized, clutter-free, really set up for concentration that can make a huge difference in your ability to stay on task.
And the audiobook underscores this idea of the compounding effect of focus. Small, consistent periods of focused work done regularly over time can lead to truly remarkable achievements. It's a good reminder that progress isn't always about giant leaps. It's often about that consistent, directed attention on your most important goals.
So yeah, cultivating the power of focus. It's a fundamental skill for anyone serious about using 80-20 to build something significant. By setting clear intentions, actively killing distractions, using focus techniques, you can dramatically boost your effectiveness and achieve way more with less wasted effort.
We're honing focus, building habits. Now, how do we make sure we're aiming all that focused energy towards the areas where we naturally shine, where we can achieve the biggest impact in building our empires?
That leads perfectly into the audiobooks chapter on leveraging your strengths. It introduces this really powerful idea. When you work from your natural talents, the things you enjoy, you're kind of naturally applying the 80-20 principle because you tend to get significant results with less perceived effort and you have more internal drive.
Exactly. Strengths are those things you're inherently good at. Skills that come relatively easily, activities you genuinely find energizing. When you operate from your strengths, you often hit that flow state, achieve great outcomes with less struggle.
So the big question is, how do we figure out what our core strengths actually are? The audiobook suggests several good methods. One really powerful way is just reflecting on past successes. Think about times you felt really effective, proud of what you accomplished. Then, for each success, identify the specific skills, talents, personal qualities that made it happen. Patterns often start to emerge, revealing your underlying strengths. The audiobook even has a quick exercise for you listening. List 5 significant successes, personal or professional, and jot down the key skills you use for each.
Another really insightful method is to just ask people you trust. Get feedback. Friends, family, mentors, colleagues who've seen you in action, ask them straight up, what do you think are my main strengths? Their outside perspective can be incredibly valuable, highlighting things you might overlook. The book suggests asking maybe 3 to 5 people.
And if you want something more structured, the audiobook mentions strengths assessment tools, like the Gallup Strength Finder, which can give you a detailed report on your dominant talents.
Okay, so once you have a better handle on your strengths, the next crucial step is to consciously align them with the 80-20 principle in your empire building context. It's highly likely that your natural strengths fall right into that 20% of activities that will generate 80% of your best results, the results that contribute most powerfully to your overall vision. The book gives an example like a visionary leader, right? Maybe they excel at strategic thinking, inspiring people, those are their strengths. They should focus there and delegate the operational details, which might be a weaker area for them. That's how they drive the company most effectively.
So the key is strategically leveraging those strengths for maximum impact. This means constantly prioritizing the high-impact activities that play directly to your strongest talents. And conversely, it usually makes sense to delegate or even just stop doing tasks that rely heavily on your weaker areas. Those are probably your trivial many.
And just because something is a strength doesn't mean you can't get better at it, right? The audiobook encourages continuous learning and development in your areas of strength. Take courses, read books, find mentors. Also, think about how you can combine multiple strengths, create synergies that give you a unique edge in building your empire.
The audiobook shares those great examples. Steve Jobs' relentless focus on design and user experience, Oprah Winfrey's incredible communication and empathy skills. Those strengths were absolutely instrumental to their success.
And this chapter wraps up with a clear call to action for you listening. Make a conscious plan. Spend more time on activities using your strengths, less time on your weaknesses. Track it. See what happens to your effectiveness and, frankly, your job satisfaction.
But strategically focusing on your strengths, you're basically tapping into your unique superpowers. It lets you make more significant progress with greater ease and honestly, probably more enjoyment as you build that lasting legacy.
Okay, leveraging strengths, that makes a lot of sense. Now, how can we amplify our efforts even further by consciously shaping the world around us, our environment, to really support these ambitious goals we have?
Right, that brings us to the audiobooks chapter on creating a supportive environment. It really emphasizes that a thoughtfully designed environment, and that includes both your physical space and your social network, can significantly boost your ability to apply the 80-20 principle and speed up your progress towards building your empire.
Absolutely. A supportive environment isn't just about comfort. It's about intentionally setting up the conditions that foster focus, productivity, growth, and just overall well-being, all of which are totally crucial for sustained success in any big undertaking.
The audiobook tackles the physical surroundings first, a key thing. Decluttering your workspace. Sounds simple, but a clean, organized, maybe even aesthetically pleasing space can genuinely minimize distractions and promote mental clarity. Makes it easier to focus on what matters. The book even suggests just 15 minutes a day for tidying your main work area.
Creating dedicated inspiration zones is another interesting idea, like specific spots in your workspace where you put things that motivate you, remind you of your goals, vision boards, quotes, mementos of past wins. And also making sure your workspace is just functional. Easy access to the tools and resources you need minimizes friction and wasted time.
Then the audiobook dives into the social environment, which is arguably even more critical, the people you surround yourself with. Cultivating relationships with supportive, motivated people who believe in your vision, that provides invaluable encouragement, maybe even accountability. Seeking out mentors who've already achieved what you're aiming for, huge potential for guidance and insight. And creating accountability partnerships with peers who are also striving for big goals. That provides mutual support, keeps you both on track.
The emotional climate you create within yourself is also part of this supportive environment. Practicing positive self-talk, managing stress effectively, maybe through mindfulness, exercise, whatever works for you, developing emotional resilience. That all significantly impacts your ability to push through challenges and stay focused long-term.
And in our digital world, our online environment is just as important. The audiobook recommends a digital declutter. Unsubscribe from junk emails, curate your social media feeds, focus on inspiring educational stuff, minimize exposure to digital noise that doesn't help you.
What's important to remember, the audiobook stresses, is that creating this supportive environment isn't a one-and-done thing. It's an ongoing process. You have to regularly assess if your surroundings, physical and social, are truly serving your goals. Be willing to make adjustments. It finishes with practical steps for you. Take a hard look at your current environment. Identify specific changes you could make to make it more supportive. Implement those changes gradually.
By consciously crafting a supportive environment, you're essentially setting the stage for your own success, making it significantly easier to consistently apply that 80-20 principle and move steadily towards building your empire.
Okay, we've talked about optimizing our work and personal environments. Now let's shift focus to an area that's both deeply personal and has a huge impact on our overall success and happiness: our relationships.
That's right. The audiobook actually dedicates a whole chapter to applying the 80-20 principle specifically to relationships. It makes a point that while meaningful connections are obviously essential for a fulfilling life, not all relationships contribute equally to our happiness or provide the support we need to achieve big goals.
Yeah, the core idea here is that often something like 80% of the joy, the support, the positive energy we get from relationships, it comes from maybe just 20% of those connections. These are our vital few relationships, the ones that truly nourish and empower us. And conversely, the other 80% of our relationships might contribute a much smaller fraction to our well-being. And sometimes, honestly, they can even be a source of stress or pull us away from our core objectives.
So the critical first step is to thoughtfully identify your vital few. The audiobook encourages you to really reflect. Which relationships consistently bring you joy? Who genuinely encourages and supports your ambitions? Who lets you be your authentic self? Who are the people that, when you spend time with them, you leave feeling energized and motivated? Who offers constructive feedback and challenges you to grow in positive ways? Those are likely your 20%. The relationship's really deserving of your focused time and energy.
And once you've identified those vital few, it's just as important to think carefully about the other 80%, the trivial many relationships. Now, this isn't necessarily about cutting people off, but more about being conscious of where you invest your time and emotional energy. Some relationships might be more surface level. Some might consistently drain your energy without much reciprocity. The audiobook suggests setting healthy boundaries, focusing on quality over quantity in interactions, and being okay with gently creating distance from relationships that consistently detract from your well-being or your progress.
And with your vital few, the emphasis shifts heavily towards quality time, not just frequency, meaningful conversations, active listening, sharing experiences, being fully present. Effective communication is absolutely key here, being open, honest, regularly expressing appreciation for these crucial connections.
Interestingly, the book also suggests maybe fostering connections among your vital few, like encouraging positive interactions, building a supportive network within your closest circle. That can create a really powerful, resilient support system. And, like with everything 80-20, regular self-reflection is crucial. Periodically check in. Is the time and energy I'm putting into different relationships aligned with my values and priorities? Be willing to adjust.
The chapter wraps up with a really powerful reminder. Relationships are a two-way street. It's also about giving. Strive to be the 20% in someone else's life. Be that source of support, encouragement, and positive influence for the people you care about most.
So, by thoughtfully applying the 80-20 principle to your relationships, you can cultivate deeper, more meaningful connections with the people who genuinely enrich your life and provide the strongest foundation for your empire-building journey.
Okay, we've arrived at the final chapter discussed in the audiobook's analysis, and it tackles something really crucial for long-term success and just plain human fulfillment, living a balanced life.
That's right. Because while hitting ambitious goals is great, the audiobook emphasizes that true success isn't just about professional wins. It includes finding harmony and fulfillment across all the important areas of life: work, family, health, personal growth.
And surprise, surprise, the 80-20 principle can be a really valuable framework for finding that balance too. It's about strategically identifying the critical 20% of activities in each major life domain that yield the most significant positive impact. This allows you to give enough attention to all areas without feeling constantly overwhelmed or neglecting things that truly matter.
The audiobook illustrates this across several key areas. In your professional life, focus on that 20% of high-impact work that drives most of your results, freeing up more time and mental space for other things. Personal relationships. Nurture those vital few connections bringing the most joy and support. Health and well-being. Prioritize the core habits: exercise, diet, sleep, maybe mindfulness, that give you the biggest health bang for your buck.
It also touches on emotional and mental balance, like identifying the 20% of stressors causing 80% of your anxiety, then prioritizing self-care strategies to tackle those root causes. Personal growth. Pinpoint the few key skills or areas of development that will have the biggest positive impact on your long-term goals, and focus your learning there. And finally, it highlights making dedicated time for recreation and leisure, the activities that genuinely bring you joy, help you recharge. That ensures you maintain perspective, avoid burnout on the empire-building path.
The audiobook's concluding message here is really powerful. Achieving a balanced life is fundamentally about making conscious choices. It's about intentionally focusing on what truly matters for your long-term well-being and fulfillment, not just chasing a narrow definition of success or constant hustle. It's about using the 80-20 principle as a practical guide to create a more harmonious, sustainable approach both to building your empire and living a rich, meaningful life overall.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the key takeaway really is that the 80-20 principle is much more than just a productivity trick. It's a powerful lens, a way to view all aspects of your life, especially when you're striving to build something significant. It's about that strategic focus on the vital few, the 20%, that truly drives 80% of the results you want in your tasks, your relationships, your time, your whole approach to building your empire and living a balanced life.
And just as crucial is that conscious effort to identify and then minimize the trivial many. All those activities, relationships, commitments that eat up your precious resources without giving much back. We really encourage you to take some time this week. Reflect on your own vital few and trivial many across different parts of your life. Start experimenting with some of the strategies we've talked about today. Even small, intentional shifts in where you put your focus can lead to really significant results over time.
Yeah, the audiobook ultimately leaves us with this feeling of inspired action, of resilience. And maybe the most powerful way to apply the 80-20 principle when building an empire is precisely that strategic focus it offers. It allows you to channel your limited energy, your limited resources towards that critical 20% of effort that will create the most significant, the most lasting impact on the vision you hold. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the 80-20 principle.